Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Create for No Reason. I am so excited because my guest today is someone who has been on the show. Gosh, so it feels like forever ago. It's been such a long time. It was actually when Sean and I were doing the show together. So it has morphed into something a little different, which happens with your creative journeys. And who better to talk about it than my guest today? I'm excited to introduce you to Jen Liss. She is a coach for people who are ready to untether from the crap that's holding them back and claim their own power. Known for her silliness, contagious enthusiasm, and engaging storytelling, Jen enjoys finding levity in the mundane, but she is serious about one thing: inspiring people to take action on their dreams. As the host of the podcast Untethered by Jen Liss, she interviews people who've crafted their own success journeys so others can learn to do the same. I'm so excited to chat with you again, Jen.
Hi.
Hello, hello. Oh my gosh, it's been a long time. It's been a while.
I lived in an entirely different state, 1,500 miles away back then.
That's right. Oh
So
my
much has
gosh.
changed.
Yeah, because you're in Oregon now.
Yes, in Oregon now. I was a Kansas girl all my life until the past year. Yeah,
Oh my God. And how are you liking it?
I love it. I'm obsessed.
Really?
I'm obsessed.
Really?
Like
Why?
every place has its like things that are amazing and things that aren't so amazing, but I feel like the amazing, at least for me, is so outweighed on like the weird stuff. Actually, I love the weird stuff. Oregon's so weird. I'm like people who wrote fairy tale, like all of this weird stuff has come out of this area, and you understand it when you live here because it's weird. The landscape is weird. Everything is weird, and it's awesome. Weirdly
Oh,
awesome.
what do you mean by weird? What's so weird about it?
There's like moss growing on everything, and it's like it feels like, I mean, it rains so much and then it rains not at all. It's like there's just the topography is just different from anything I personally have experienced, at least as a Kansan. It's so foreign. There's
Yeah.
flowers just popping up all over the place in like every season. The grass is green in the winter and dead in the summer. It's weird,
Oh my
right? That's
gosh,
weird.
that is a little weird, but that's Oregon, I guess. And I have a friend that lives in Salem, and so I fly into Portland when I go and visit, and it is, I mean, he loves it. He absolutely adores it there, would never leave. And it's a cool vibe. It's definitely a cool
It's a
vibe.
vibe. It's a
Yeah.
vibe. Yep. And just people are very open to be themselves in a way that I personally have never experienced. The Midwest is wonderful in its own right. It has things that other places don't have too. But here, people are just so free to be. And it's so cool. I love it.
Oh, I'm so glad that you love it. That's so great. Well, lots has changed since you were first on the show. In fact, you were on the show because we had met forever ago on Clubhouse, and I invited you on the show because you had a podcast called Creative Commute.
Yep.
And that's what we were talking about then. And not only have you moved and you have this new magical life, but you started a new podcast. Like your whole world is different. And today we really, as Jen and I were talking about, what is the title of this episode and what are we going to talk about? I love that you threw out this idea of follow your creative breadcrumbs. And I wanted to talk a little bit about your journey because you do really lean into your creativity. And from starting that podcast to kind of where you are now, can you kind of give us like the 30,000 foot view of like where you were and kind of some of the steps that you took to where you are now with your new podcast and what you're doing?
Yes, it has been quite a journey, but I'll give you the 30,000 foot view and not the like 30-inch view.
We'll take pieces of that
Yeah.
where we can dive into.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I had started the Creative Commute podcast. It came out of COVID. During COVID times, I started a Facebook group, called it the Creative Commute, and we were doing creative activities to spark joy during such a wild time. So then the natural progression of that became a podcast because I was like, ooh, I'm loving this. I'm loving some of the conversations we're having. And it became a podcast. I was never like, I'm going to be a podcaster, but it just kind of naturally happened. Well, then over the past few years, I've done a lot of self-exploration that was sparked by the podcast, by sharing my voice, by getting on Clubhouse, meeting people like you, having conversations like this. And something just was like starting to feel kind of boxed in about the creative commute. It felt like it had started from a different place, and I've gone along this journey. And I recently realized like untethering is actually like something that I'm so passionate about. And that's how the podcast developed into Untethered. And now I'm just like, oh, I'm like a kid in a candy store with the conversations that I get to have on that topic. But part of my personal untethering was I've always wanted to live somewhere else. Like I'm Kansas girl, so 38 years spent in Kansas, but it was on my bucket list. My husband and I wrote out these bucket lists years ago when we first got married, and on there was live somewhere else. I wanted the experience of it, but had felt so. I mean, my whole family, like I have a niece being born like 3 weeks ago. You know, everybody's there, and it was so hard to leave. But I managed to, spring out anew. And so that has been a huge part of my personal journey, a huge part of my personal untethering of all of the things kind of holding me stuck in place so I can grow and find new skills and do new things and follow those creative breadcrumbs. It legitimately has been a journey of one little creative step after another and letting myself do them and not being attached to what the outcome is going to be. So
Oh,
brought me all to here.
it's so hard to not think about the outcome and to really enjoy the process, especially with such a big move, Jen. I feel like a lot of people have this idea of wanting to maybe get up and move and have a new life, new friends, but it's it's scary, and most people don't actually make the move unless it's, for a job or something that they're going towards, not really just as an experience. So, I'm so curious, just when you first moved, like what were some of the feelings that you felt like when you first got there? And were you like, oh my gosh, did I make the wrong decision? And like how long did it take you to get really comfortable in your new environment?
Such good questions. I like to say that moving across the country is really hard, but in all the ways that I didn't expect it to be hard. Like I thought the logistics, the actually doing it, like all these things would be hard. And sure, they were, but it was the emotional struggle that was the hardest thing. It was knowing you're going to leave the people, actually going through like letting go of some of your stuff. Like we lived in this house for 10 years. We had so much stuff. We had so much stuff. And so letting go of that was really, really hard. And then to answer your question, when we got here, there was kind of this terror, like, what have we done? Like, oh my God, we're here. We're here. There was kind of like a euphoria, this really exciting, a whole new world, like we're like, we're like Aladdin and what's Aladdin's gal's name?
Aladdin
Not Aladdin's gal. What Jasmine's guy is named Aladdin. Okay.
That's right.
But yeah, it was really exciting, but it was also pretty terrifying. And there were things, you discover things about yourself. And my husband and I we got together in high school, and we're discovering new things about ourselves daily. It seems like there's a whole new box that we just kind of like opened that we could have kept closed the rest of our lives if we didn't make this move. So it's been really exciting. Sure, it's scary, but it's been so worth it.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so awesome. Now, with your creative project, so you were working remotely when you moved, correct? Was your husband doing the same thing?
Yeah, so I actually was unable to continue my job because they were not okay with me working remotely when I left. But we really came here for the excuse that we used, which was a legitimate excuse, like an actual reason. It wasn't really an excuse, but I'll call it an excuse, is that he wanted to work in the craft beer industry. So what he did, there's not that many options in Wichita, Kansas to do that. He kind of like mentored at a few places, but there's not a ton of options. So he put applications in places all over the US, and we let the winds take us where they may. And that's how we ended up in Oregon. So I got a new
Oh.
job once I got here. And he has been in the craft brew world, now in the whiskey making world. So it's been real fun for
Wow.
him. He has been on his own creative commute. That's for sure. That's what we called it, was like, okay, Joey, this is your creative commute. Let's go. And it took us here.
Oh, that's so cool. So let's talk a little bit about your creative projects. You're loving the podcast. It's different than what you were doing before. How do you see it differently? How is it different than the conversations you were having before? And what do you see it and envision it being in the future?
Yeah, so it's not that different. That's what I think is cool, is like it's just an evolution of me. And that's why I kept the same. For anybody who does podcasting, has been like thinking about doing podcasting, I kept the same RSS feed. So you can go back and see all the Creative Commute episodes. They're still attached to Untethered with Jen Liss. I didn't change the feed because honestly, it's not that big of a difference. It's just more of a focus on the things holding us back, because I realized over time the creative commute for me, it wasn't the commute itself that I'm so fascinated with. It's the things stopping us from commuting. It's the things that are like keeping us held in place so that we can't do the things, so that we can't move forward. And so that's like where I really want to focus. So it's just like this like little key turning that happened. And I think that's okay. What I love, I have a coach, and she's like, just do it messy. Like, people will understand it's you. Like, my story is me. My podcast is me, exploring these things I'm curious about. And so I think that's the thing, is like being willing to embrace those imperfections and allow it to just be part of the journey, and allow other people to come along that journey with you. I think that's remarkably powerful. And it's why I look up to the coach that I personally have, is because I see her doing it. It's like, we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have it so thought out in every way. You and I didn't have like a prep conversation for this to like do, an hour of discussing what we're going to discuss. We just like said, hey, this will be really cool. Let's talk about creative breadcrumbs. Let's go. And it's fun, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you said that it's just you, because you're exploring your creativity. Your podcast happens to be very much around, you just have these conversations with people that are interesting to you, and you let it become what it's supposed to become. And I've been thinking a lot about, I wrote this in my newsletter. One of the things that I wrote was about creative courage, because I've
Mm.
noticed that a lot of people that I really look up to in the work that they do, is I'm so fascinated by how did they make the decision? Like, how did they decide? So, you changed the name of your podcast, but you kept the RSS feed. I'm thinking, ooh, how did Jen make that creative decision? Like, that is all a creative decision. And I think it's really cool that you can make it and move forward. Like, you do it and you can and take the step forward. And I think what stops so many people is that idea that we have to have it figured out. We have to get it right. We read, oh, you have to have all of these things set up before you launch your podcast or your YouTube channel or whatever. But then you look at some people and they're like, well, I just started posting videos and all of a sudden I discovered who I was and what I actually wanted to be talking about. And I discovered my point of view and my perspective. And we talk a lot about comedians on the show, because it's the same thing. Like, they have to get up on stage night after night after night, and it takes them years sometimes to really find their voice and find what it is that interests them. So can you talk a little bit about that for you? Because it's been really fun watching you on your journey as you really find your voice, and you lean into that imperfection, and you have that creative courage to do the work that you really want to do, and you help others do that as well.
Yeah, I love that you brought up this idea of creative courage, because I think I was thinking about this when I was getting ready this morning, that kids are so creatively courageous. They just get out there and just like, wow, they like pretend that they have a sword, and they're just like wielding it around with no fear for like what what everybody else thinks of them. Or, they're just like, they see the sword in their mind, and so they wield it around until they accidentally knock something over. And it's like they're okay with it. They just like move on, right?
Yep,
But
exactly.
and it's like, how could we as adults do that more often? Because we really have to give ourselves room to play. to be free, to allow creative ideas to come, because when we have it all figured out strategically, there's less room for the play to come in. Now, I'm not saying that we should all be just like chaotically wielding swords around, but how can we do more of it? Because most of us are already actually really good at trying to figure it all out. We're really good at that. We're
Yeah.
really good about thinking 15 steps ahead, right? You know, the painter knows what the kind of an idea of what things are going to be, and then they're kind of like playing along along the way. And we can do that too. Like I can do that with my podcast. I knew with the creative commute, oh, I'm really interested in helping people on their journeys. And then as I got into the creative commute journey, I realized, oh, it's actually the stuckness that I'm so interested in. So it's like, it's the same like destination in a way, but maybe it just kind of like shifts, the little points are shifting along the way. But if we don't give ourselves room to play and to be courageous to take some of those like unknown steps, like we can't ever get to that final destination. We're just going to keep going in circles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the messy middle. You have to be in the messy middle. And that's what happened when I was writing my book, and my writing coach, I was so upset. I can't even tell you how many calls I had with her, but I was bawling my eyes out because it
Aw.
was so frustrating. And she said, at one point I said, I just don't even know if I want to even finish this. I just think it sucks and I don't even want to publish it. And she goes, Kate, you're in the messy middle. Like, that's all. Like, you're in the mess. Like, you're supposed to feel like this. I was like, well, this sucks.
It does suck. It does suck.
It does. So, and that's actually getting to the middle, where I feel like so many people, they don't even get to that place, right? They talk themselves out of it. So with the clients that you work with, I mean, you're a coach, you help people through these. What do you feel is the top 3 reasons why people are not pursuing their dreams, their passions, what they really want?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I think judgment is one of the biggest things. I think perfectionism, but those are so tied together, judgment and perfectionism. Fear, it's like fear of judgment and then a need to perfect. And then actually achiever syndrome of like seeking just the praise. I think that holds a lot of us really stuck in place. So that is people pleasing, you know, achieving, trying to go for things that we know are just going to get us the praise instead of going for the things that are going to bring us the joy. that's
Ooh,
that's a big, that's actually if you boil it down to one thing, that's the one thing.
Really?
I think that's the one thing.
You do. Interesting. That to me, I just thought ego. It feels very ego driven.
Yeah. Well, okay, maybe that's the one thing. Those are so tied together though. When you're
Yes.
supporting the ego, which is, you know, judgment, perfectionism, achieving, people pleasing, codependency, all of those things are like so rolled up in pleasing the ego self. And it's like if you can just please the higher self, which is joy, it loves, you know, like we at our essence, like I believe that we are creativity. We are part of nature. We are birthed of all of the things that everything else is birthed of, right? We're actual stardust. we are creativity, and when we can tap into that, that's where all of the goodness comes. But, you know, if you look at just a visual of it, like your perfectionism and all of that fear of judgment and all of the, you know, people pleasing and the codependent relationships, all of that is like a shell that we're wearing on top of our gorgeous creative inner self. And like the more we can go inside instead of looking at all that stuff on the outside, the better we can move forward. Does that sound wild?
That sounds amazing. Imagine if everybody just came from a place of joy and love and not ego, and just really leaning into their creativity, which, even as I say that, I know there are so many people that don't even consider themselves creative. They feel right? Like
It's
that.
painful. It's like stabbing in the heart every time I think about that. Yes, there's so many. That is such a problem. It's such a problem.
And
Because
it,
how can you get in touch with your creative inner self, which is you, which is your inner goodness, that's your magic, if you can't even admit to yourself, allow yourself to see and believe that you're creative.
Yeah, because everyone's creative in their own unique individual way. That is why you need to listen to that inner voice telling you what it is that you really are interested in doing. What is an activity? So you're working with someone and they're dealing with, we'll just say perfectionism, because that's one that comes up all the time. And they're that person that's like, well, I don't have this right yet. I don't have the right camera. I don't have the right equipment, or I'm not great at writing it, whatever their creative pursuit is. And they're just holding themselves back, and they're coming to you. Are there specific exercises that you can share that really help people kind of break free and finally take that first initial step?
Yeah, it's really centered in understanding that feedback is not a scary thing, and feedback is such a beneficial thing in its own right. And I think when we understand that, then we allow ourselves to go and do something that might be a little bit wild or scary, which could be going and just throwing something up on social media. That's something that I personally, it has been some of the most powerful work that I have done is go live on social media right now. You got nothing, you don't have any plan of what you're going to talk about, but just go live. And then not only do you get feedback from, oh, okay, 10 people actually viewed that, or maybe nobody viewed that. Okay, how did I feel about that? Whether it was 10 people or 0 people, like that is real feedback. That is like creative feedback to help you understand, like, okay, I did that. That was creative courage. Like I got out and I did that. Okay, how did it feel? Okay, how did other people react? Okay, it's like then you have that feedback that you can then move forward with. And that helps you be, the more you can do that, the more you can be messy with your creative pursuits and just put something out there to see how it feels. It is like a tap. It's like you've tapped into something brand new by looking at it that way. It's so powerful. Have you done that, Kate?
Oh, I go live all the time.
Yeah. But like no plan. You're like,
Oh yeah.
we're like, yeah.
I've done that so many times. But I also used to run a marketing company and I taught business owners how to go live. Like I was upset, like when Facebook first came out with live, it was my jam. I was like, "Ooh, this is so fun and cool." And that hasn't scared me, but for me, what was kind of maybe equivalent to that to me was sharing my poetry. I was petrified to share that because I have no issue going live or talking about business stuff, or give me a microphone. I'll talk for as long as you need me to talk. Like that's never been my problem. Well, in my career, it's never been my problem, but that is a creative side that I've really learned to tap into over the past few years. But when I started writing more poetry, I never would have dreamed that I would have put it out into the world. The first time that I actually shared it, I shared it on Medium, the website. And I still remember being so nervous. Now, who saw it? Like, probably just like maybe a couple people here and there. But then I actually got a couple comments on it. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. Someone I don't know read this and actually commented on it. But to your point about the feedback, I was so nervous to do it. I put it out. I lived. It was okay. Nothing bad happened. And then it really kind of gave me that extra push to say, oh, maybe I want to share a little bit more of my work. And now I have no problem sharing more of that side of the work that I do. But that's kind of like equivalent to me because I was so nervous to do that. But it was awesome after I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such a great example. Thank you for sharing that because it is just seeing your own experience as feedback that can move forward because often I think we think we have to like figure out a whole thing and then go through the whole thing and then we get the feedback. Where it's like, no, you can just get a little bit now based on how you feel. How do
Yes.
you feel when you do that thing? It's like you want to be a yoga teacher. Well, go to a yoga class and then start talking to the teacher, see how it feels to learn about what they are doing. It's like allow yourself to just have that experience, and then you learn from that experience. It feels like, I know that seems so obvious, but I think a lot of us, myself included, haven't thought of it that way. And there's some kind of a switch that seems to flip for my coaching clients when we talk about it that way too.
Yeah, it's perspective. It's like you have to
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny. And I love that you said you deal with it too because we all do. We all deal with all of this stuff, right? I mean, even when I hear creators that have millions of followers and how they still deal with perfectionism and imposter syndrome and all of these things. It just reminds us that we're all human. We all deal with this stuff. It's just some people push through it and just do it. And that's what I love about the work that you're doing because I do believe that everyone has that inner calling of whatever dream that is for them of things they want to pursue. And it's not, I mean, that's what this show's about, right? It's not to do it to make money, to get rich, to get famous, any of that stuff. It's literally just because you find joy in it. It brings you joy, you get excited, and you're pursuing it. Now, you obviously have taken something you really love and get so much joy from and have really turned it into a business, which I know a lot of people want to do. So, what do you envision for yourself? Like, what are you most excited about, Jen, over the next year for you and your creativity and what you're building?
Yeah. So something that I have done very recently is to really get back in touch with inner me, little me, who loves to be silly, loves to have fun, enjoys being weird. I'm in the right place here in Portland, and allowing that to flourish. As I have done that, it has brought new things into my life. One of them being speaking, which I realize in hindsight, podcasting is speaking, but I never saw myself as somebody to step on stage and speak. And I just participated in this competition. And my first speaking deal ever, I've never written a speech for myself, and got second place. And now I'm going to go to Toronto, Canada, go stand on stage and speak. And so there is something that unlocked for me. I like twisted that key again, and it's like, oh my gosh, this feels so good. Like, I would have probably never, if somebody had said, Jen, like 2 years ago, go write a speech for yourself and perform it, I would have been like, you've lost your mind. No, absolutely not. Like, that's not a thing I do. But now I'm doing it. And so now I'm like, ooh, maybe that could be a really fun thing that I pursue. We'll see how this feels. But then my coaching business, I would love to grow that more and more, supporting people, helping more people do some of the things that I myself have done in the past few years. I know that that's part of why I have been put here on this earth, is to do more of that. So super passionate about that. More people admitting that they're creative. I know you and I align so much on that. And so, yeah, we'll see where it all leads, but I'm just really excited to get to be me while doing it.
Yeah. Oh, well, congratulations on getting second place on your first speaking gig. That's so cool.
Thanks. I know, so fun. And I talked about getting stuck in a bathtub. I talked about naked presidents in bathtubs. Like, it was the most fun that I've had. I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go full in me, and we'll just see how it goes. And
Naked
turns out
presidents in
people like to
bathtubs.
hear about.
What's the name of it? What was the name of your speech? Because it should be
Oh,
that.
I know. I named it "The Truth About Getting Stuck in a Bathtub." So, for those who don't know the story about President William Howard Taft, supposedly he's the 27th president. Supposedly he got stuck in a bathtub. And when I was in fourth grade, I wanted to write an essay about it, but I saw that the other kids were doing super serious topics, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to be that kid that's like writing the essay about the bathtub." And basically after that, like, that sent me on a lifetime of trying to be really serious and ensure that everybody else knows how serious I am, which is actually not me at all. I would rather write an essay about the president getting stuck in a bathtub, Like, that's me. That's me. And so at 39 years old, I'm now getting back to 9-year-old Jen. And although the essay never happened, the speech happened. So there's that.
I love that. See, that right there, that is so cool because everyone that's listening can think of a time in their life when they wanted to do the opposite of what they were supposed to do. They had this different idea. And sometimes, like you said, when you're little, you try a lot of things, but I mean, I don't even know how little kids are now. Like they're still so young when they start getting the no, you can't do that, or that's unsafe, or try it a different way, or that's not the right way. Like we have to be so conscious of how we're speaking to kids because we want to, that helps when we're older to lean into that creativity, to know that
Yeah.
it's okay that you have those different thoughts or you're thinking something a little bit differently than your friends or your colleagues. Or, I mean, that's what makes the world so beautiful, is that everyone has these different ideas and perspectives. And so I love that you even thought that when you were a kid writing this essay. Like, that's so cool.
I mean, it's so true, Kate. Like we take safety, we misunderstand, I think sometimes, it's like these parameters are set on us for certain reasons. Like you go through school and it's like, oh, do it this way, not that way. And there's a logical reason for the teacher teaching us that, or there's a logical reason for our parents telling us to not get our hand near the stove. Like those are really logical, but our brain doesn't always incorporate that information in that same logical way. It attaches it to other things. And then we feel like to be safe, to be socially safe, which is especially hard, I think, in this day and age. I feel for children growing up with the social media world.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
to
Yeah.
feel socially safe, we have to do it the way that is socially acceptable. And so then it's like we don't feel like we're our true selves because we're living within this box. And it just, it breaks. I mean, my own heart is broken realizing how many years I lived without really fully being myself, So the more people we can hit early.
Yeah. Yes, and encourage them. Well, I'm so excited for you. I think you have so many interesting things going on. I'm so excited for your podcast. I'm so excited that you love Portland so much. It's such a great place. I asked you this the last time, and I ask all of our guests for one activity that the listener can do in 10 minutes or less to live a more creative and fulfilling life.
Yes. Okay. Can I this is not necessarily going to be like a creative exercise. Gosh, I could give you so many creative exercises, but pick an object. Pick an object. For me, I'm holding up my little Penny, the penguin. She's a rock I found on a hike, and she's holding a tiny little heart, and she's the cutest thing you've ever seen. But when I hold her, I feel joy, like joy on demand, goodness. And so what you can do in order to create your own little Penny the Penguin, pick an object. It doesn't have to be a special object. It could just be anything. It could just be a pen sitting on your desk, whatever it is, but it's going to be your designated object. And when you feel that, the way that you can start it is to think about your dog, or to think about hugging your mom, or to think about giving your dog a hug, or think about eating a Chipotle burrito. I don't care what it is, but think about something that genuinely brings you joy. And then over time, do this multiple times a day. Over time, you will start to be able to feel joy on demand. Eventually, you don't have to have Penny the Penguin, although I still love her and hold her a lot, but I can feel it on demand because your joy center is your creative center. And so when you can feel that and you can tap into that, you can create from a place of that feels true to you, as we've talked about in this episode. And that is one super easy way to do it.
That I love that, Jen. I love joy on demand.
Joy on tap. Yeah.
That's so great. It's that getting into that feeling of it. It's whenever I think about that, I think of that all that work from like Dr. Joe Dispenza. Like you have to feel this certain way in order to be that certain thing. And so I love that you tapped into that get joy on demand.
Yeah. And
We
I
all
think
need joy on demand.
we do, but I think that there's a couple of things that I say this because this was me. I didn't believe that that was possible. I didn't believe that that was true. It felt fake at first because I was more comfortable feeling uncomfortable than feeling good. So, some of those things that are just ingrained in a lot of us, it can feel a little bit weird at first, but it is real. It is true. You legitimately can have joy on demand when you want to. And I'm not saying that we don't all have hard crap happening in our lives, because we do. The world is still full of sorrow, and you can still feel joy right now. it's the yes and.
Yes, and I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, it was so good to see you, Jen.
You
And
too.
what is the best way for people to connect with you?
Yes, people can follow me on Instagram at Untethered Jen. And then my podcast is Untethered with Jen Liss. So give it a listen. And I love Create for No Reason. Something somebody said on my podcast episode last week was create regardless. And I thought instantly was like, Kate, same thing.
Aw, I love that. Awesome. Well, you are awesome. Thank you so much. And I look forward to watching you continue your fun, creative journey.
Thank you so much. Loved this.